Is Ferrari really favoring Charles Leclerc within the same team, even leaving Lewis Hamilton behind? Because what just happened in Japan is not a simple bad race. It is a direct accusation that could completely break Ferrari from within. Hamilton has dropped a bomb in the paddock, talking about inexplicable lack of power, internal differences, and decisions that do not add up, and most serious of all, insinuating that not everyone within the team is competing on equal terms. What seemed like a technical problem now smells like something much bigger. And if this is true, Ferrari could be entering an internal war that no one saw coming. Because the big question is, are we facing the beginning of Ferrari's biggest internal scandal in years? The weekend in Suzuka didn't start badly. It started with signs that Ferrari decided to ignore. Because since Friday, Lewis Hamilton was already making it clear that something was not right, and it was not a simple feeling, it was a total disconnection with the car. While the team tried to justify the problems with the new asphalt or the evolution of the circuit, Hamilton released a phrase that set off all the alarms. He did not trust the car. And this is where the really worrying thing begins, because it wasn't just performance. It was a lack of confidence, which in Formula One is everything. When a driver like Hamilton with all his experience reaches that point, it means there is something deeper than just a failed adjustment. Meanwhile, on the other side of the garage, Charles Leclerc also had problems, yes, but they were different. Less aggressive, more controllable. And that began to make a silent difference that Ferrari either did not know or did not want to explain. Because although they both suffered, they did not do it in the same way. The classification confirmed what was already intuited. Ferrari was not at the level. Leclerc managed to minimize damage, but Hamilton was left more exposed, with a clear difference that was beginning to bother. And the most disturbing thing wasn't the position. It was the feeling that one of the two was fighting with something other than the car. Still, Sunday offered an opportunity. A race where strategy, pace, and details could change everything. And for a moment, it seemed that Ferrari could save the weekend. But what came next didn't just ruin Hamilton's career. He uncovered something that had been hidden within the team for some time. And it was there, right at that point, where the real problem began. The race started with a false sense of control, because during the first laps, Lewis Hamilton was exactly where Ferrari needed him to be. In podium position, managing the pace well, and taking advantage of every opportunity that the strategy gave him. Even the safety car worked in his favor. It placed him in an ideal position, third, with everything in sight to consolidate the first great solid result of the year for him within the team. And for a moment, it seemed like all the chaos of Friday and Saturday was behind us. But then, everything fell apart. Without warning, Hamilton began to lose performance on the straights. It was not progressive, it was not a normal degradation. It was something immediate, strange, impossible to ignore. The car simply stopped responding, as it should. And in a matter of laps, he went from defending a podium to being an easy target. Charles Leclerc surpasses him first. Then he falls to direct rivals. And finally, he ends up outside of any real fight. The most disconcerting thing wasn't losing positions, it was how he lost them. Undefended. No top speed. No logical explanation. And this is where the story completely changes. Because while Hamilton was dragging on the straights, Leclerc with the same car, the same team, the same specification in theory did have enough power to stay competitive. That difference wasn't small, it was too obvious to ignore. And Hamilton knew it. Each lap that passed was not only a drop in the classification, it was an internal confirmation that something was not right. Something within the team was not working equally for both sides of a garage. The race was over, but the problem was just beginning. Because what Hamilton was going to say next, it wasn't just another complaint. It was an accusation that was going to completely shake Ferrari. And then came the moment that no one at Ferrari wanted to face, the post-race statements. Because Lewis Hamilton didn't come out to speak like a frustrated driver. He came out to speak like someone who knows exactly what is happening within the team. And what he said completely changed the narrative of the Grand Prix. First, he dropped the obvious, had lost power. But he didn't say it as a guess, he said it as a certainty. Something in his car wasn't working the same. And until then, it might seem like just another technical problem. Something that Ferrari could investigate internally and correct quietly. The problem was what came next. Hamilton didn't stop there, he went further. He directly implied that he was not on equal terms with Charles Leclerc. That, while he suffered on the straights, his partner did have the necessary performance to fight at the top. And in that moment, everything exploded. Because we are no longer talking about a failure. We are talking about a possible internal difference within the same team. And that at Ferrari is pure dynamite. Eyes began to turn within the paddock. Engineers, journalists, analysts, all with the same question in their heads. How is it possible that two identical cars behave so differently in the middle of a race? Hamilton, far from softening the message, made it clear that he needed answers. That the team had to investigate what was happening, because what happened in Japan didn't make sense. And this is where the story becomes even more dangerous for Ferrari. Because when a driver like Hamilton begins to publicly doubt the team, it's not just a performance problem. It's an internal crack. A crack that can divide the garage in two. A crack that can turn the fight for the championship into a war at home. And the worst of all is that this has just begun. But if anyone thought that this was going to calm down as the hours went by, the opposite happened. Because after Lewis Hamilton's statements, Ferrari's silence did not help. It made it worse. There was no clear explanation, there was no forceful answer, and that in Formula One always means the same. There is something they do not want to say publicly. Meanwhile, within the team, the pressure began to build. Engineers reviewing data, comparisons between both cars, telemetries that had to explain the inexplicable. But the problem is that when the difference is so evident on the track, the numbers only confirm what everyone already saw. And in the middle of all this, the figure of Charles Leclerc appears. Because although he didn't say anything controversial, his position in this entire story is key. Leclerc did his race, took advantage of the pace he had, and managed to stay competitive. But now, he inevitably finds himself in the center of the storm. Not because of what he did, but because of what he represents within the team. The driver Ferrari has trusted for years. The project built for the long term. The man around whom everything revolves. And that is precisely what makes Hamilton's words carry even more weight. Because when a driver points out internal differences, he is not only talking about his car, he is indirectly questioning the team's management. He is bringing to the table something that has always been a sensitive issue at Ferrari, internal hierarchies. And this is where everything gets even more tense. And now Ferrari faces the most uncomfortable moment of all, the one that defines great teams, the reaction. Because after everything that happened, after the words of Lewis Hamilton, there's no longer room to hide behind technical excuses or internal analysis. Now it's time to decide. And that decision can change everything. Within the team, the options are clear, but none are simple. Or Ferrari recognizes that there was a real problem with Hamilton's car and corrects it immediately. Or you try to minimize the situation, risking the tension continuing to grow internally. But there is something that makes this scenario especially dangerous. Hamilton is not just any driver. He is not someone who is going to remain silent if he feels that he is not competing equally. And much less a stage in your career where every opportunity counts. Because he has not arrived at Ferrari to adapt, he has arrived to win. And meanwhile, Charles Leclerc continues to advance along his own path, publicly oblivious to the controversy, but inevitably benefiting from a situation on the track. Which, although not their fault, further fuels the narrative of a possible internal imbalance. This is where Ferrari has much more at stake than a race. The stability of the project is at stake. The coexistence between its two pilots is at stake. And above all, your credibility is at stake. Because if these types of situations are not managed well, history has already taught us how they end. With divided teams, controversial decisions, and seasons that are falling apart from within. And the great threat is already on the table. If Ferrari doesn't resolve this now, Hamilton's next bombshell might not just be a statement. It could be an open conflict within the team. Because if Ferrari does not act, if it does not clarify this situation transparently, the risk is no longer just losing performance on the track. It's losing control of the locker room. Two top-level pilots, two competing egos, and a suspicion that is already installed within the team. This is no longer a problem for the Japanese GP. It is a story that can set the course of the entire season. And the most dangerous thing for Ferrari, it's just that now everyone is watching. And so, what started as a complicated weekend in Suzuka ended up becoming one of the greatest internal tensions in memory at Ferrari in recent years. Because here we are no longer just talking about performance, we are talking about trust. And when Lewis Hamilton loses confidence in his own team, the problem stops being technical and becomes structural. Ferrari now faces an extremely delicate scenario. On the one hand, he has Charles Leclerc, his long-term project, the driver who has been the linchpin of the team for years. And on the other, you have Hamilton, a legend who has not arrived to be second to anyone and much less to compete in inequality. The question is no longer what went wrong in Japan. The real question is what Ferrari is going to do from now on. Because if they do not manage to clarify this situation quickly, if they do not give clear answers, and above all, if they do not guarantee real equality within the team, this can escalate to something much bigger. An internal conflict, a break inside the garage, and possibly the beginning of the end of a project that promised to be historic. Because in Formula One, there is something that no team can afford to lose, and it is the confidence of its pilots. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.